Alcoholism and addiction is a disease of the brain of motivation. It's a motivational disturbance. And once the motivational disturbance kicks in, multiple other injuries come along with that.
I have a very hard time calling alcoholism a disease because it was still this hand on my body that was reaching for it that I control with my brain.
Yes.
So that leads to a lot of guilt and shame and terrible things, right? Because I was the one that reached for it, and this is not a personal therapy session. But I need to know, is it a fucking disease?
Okay.
Is it a what?
So can you accept, a lot of Americans have trouble with this, that brains get diseases?
Can I accept that brain? Sure. Yep.
And that when brains get diseases, it affects your thinking and your behavior and your choices and your motivation.
Affirmative.
Alcoholism and addiction, which is really one thing to me, just what your drug of choice is the thing, is a disease of the brain of motivation. It's a motivational disturbance. And once the motivational disturbance kicks in, multiple other injuries come along with that, or phenomena come along with that. So the question that becomes, if somebody's going to decide, is this a cup or not a cup? Oh boy. Don't we first need to define what a cup is? Like, shouldn't we have a definition for it, right? Not just this cup, but all cups, okay? So we have to define what a disease is. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Okay. How should we do that? What is a disease? What are the components of a disease that will cover all diseases? So then we can say, well, does this thing we call alcoholism fit into this thing this definition we call disease?
I guess it's an imbalance, right?
Sometimes. Of what?
Of the stuff.
Of the stuff. So I'll turn over the cards. Don't feel bad because I've asked this question to faculty members in medical schools and things, and they all go, people don't think about these things, and it's important that they do. The only legitimate, well, let me tell you disease first. Disease is a complex relationship between the genetics of the substrate, the individual, and the environment. So it's a gene-environment interaction that results in an abnormal state of physiology. We call that pathophysiology. The biochemistry is altered in some way you call it out of balance, but I would call it altered in such a way that it creates a natural history, right? And a natural history is a predictable progression of signs and symptoms that end in some way. They either get better, or they become chronic, or they kill the patient, whatever. These signs and symptoms are predictable. And then people like me study those signs and symptoms and try to improve them with something we call treatment. And then we study the treatment so we know which ones are best for the signs and symptoms. So that's disease. Gene environment, abnormal physiology, signs and symptoms that progress in a predictable pattern with a predictable response to treatment. All disease fits into that category. Where people freak out with addiction is the fact that the disease is in the brain. The physiology problem is in the brain. And we want to have free will. We want to be able to trust our thinking. We feel like our motivations are well served. I mean, think about what happens in addiction. Your motivational priorities disintegrate and one emerges as the only and ultimate priority. And then all the other systems in your brain serve that motivational distortion. Going to work, raising my kids, not endangering other people, my health, all that stuff becomes not important. Using becomes the priority. And I start thinking things to justify that or to make that keep going. That thinking, that stinking thinking, is part of the disease. Then I also lose my impulse control. Like that's part of the progression. You can't control impulses as well.
And really can't? We can't.
As well.
But there's always a could, right? You always could not reach for that drink.
Yeah. But magically, humans with this condition always do go back. That's part of the signs and symptoms of this condition that people with this thing can't. If they can stop, they should just stop.
It's so hard.
Right, because they can't. It's just without some kind of something.
Yes.
Or they go back. The going back is the part that really lets you know that there's been a significant change in the brain. And then denial and all those things. And denial is a very complicated process. It has many different components to it. Some of it's psychological shame and guilt. Some of it is the biology of whatever drug you're using makes you amnestic or forget, or memory isn't working as well. Or you injure your brain, and these drugs and alcohol, they injures your brain, and it's not working as well, so you can't see what's happening. And so there's many, many layers to it. The only legitimate question on addiction is it a disease or is it a syndrome?
Okay.
A syndrome is a constellation of diseases that present with the same signs and symptoms and have varying genetic backgrounds and varying environmental influences. The reality, though, is in addiction, the environmental influence is nearly always trauma, childhood trauma, and the genetics are well worked out. So it's like, it's not a syndrome. You can think of it that way if you want, but it's very predictable, and that predictability is built into the biology.